Are you searching for fulfillment? Discover true happiness. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for that very lovely introduction and for the opportunity to present at the Renaissance of Marriage conference. I'll be running the Accidental Marriage Counsellor workshop. Why accidental marriage counsellor? Because at any time a friend, family member, colleague or parishioner could confide in you about a marital issue and you'd find yourself in the accidental counsellor role and in a position to support their marriage, but not as a professional psychologist, counsellor or therapist. And at that moment, you're probably surprised by what you're hearing, maybe feeling caught off guard and not sure what to say. And that's understandable. But the thing is, when someone does confide in you about a marital problem, they've put a lot of thought. It's taken them a lot of time to work up the courage to do so. So what you say or do can have a profound helpful or unhelpful impact on their marriage and how much they open up to you. You need to respond with compassion. Just recently, a friend was telling me about her experience where she felt caught off guard when one of her friends disclosed about her marriage problems. And she said it was because this couple seemed to have it together. They seemed to be happy, they seemed to be doing things together. And she described to me in that moment how overwhelmed she felt, how helpless she was feeling. She didn't know what to say and was so worried about saying the wrong thing because she knew the husband and wife really well. Maybe some of you can relate to this because you've been put in similar situations or know someone who has. I want you to hold on to that thought because we're going to come to it soon. But before I go on, I'd just like to set the scene. Marriage is beautiful. And when a couple are first married, it's like a beautiful yacht sailing the tropical seas. The sky is blue, the sun is shining, the water is crystal clear. You can even imagine the couple sipping champagne on the deck. The couple are working on their hopes, their dreams. They've got goals. There's a lot of teamwork. There's a lot of fun and intimacy. As a psychologist supporting couples, I don't see couples in this scene. I might see the rare, self-aware, engaged couple, and that's great because I'm able to support them understand themselves and each other's personalities, understand conflict resolution strategies that will be effective for their temperaments, and really help them work through their differences and baggage to give them a good foundation to set up their relationship. And this is so rewarding because I know I'm supporting them have and live in a rich marriage that hopefully lasts a lifetime. But sadly, when couples do come to see me, it's quite a different scene. The storms have taken its toll. That same beautiful yacht is now damaged and sinking quickly. In a lot of cases, one spouse is already overboard, leaving only one spouse that's really committed to making the marriage work. The couples are in survival mode. There's no hopes, dreams, teamwork. There's definitely no fun and intimacy, but a lot of pain and suffering. Sometimes couples come in a storm, whether it's in the aftermath of a storm or during a storm. It's so important and powerful to have hope in them and their marriages, even when they don't have hope in themselves, let alone their marriage. And in therapy, through time, I'm able to pass on that hope baton. A couple can work through so many difficulties as long as they have hope for a better future. Can you imagine what it'd be like to try and repair a yacht in the middle of a storm? But how rewarding and special, working with and supporting marriages ride out the storm, heal from the aftermaths of a storm to build a stronger marriage, and the positive ripple effects it has not only on the individual spouse, but as a couple and a family unit, and for me, most importantly, for the children. I feel blessed being instrumental in supporting and saving a marriage. No words can really describe how deeply fulfilling that is. But working with couples, what really intrigues me is this. When you're sick, you see a doctor. When you've got a toothache, you see a dentist. But when couples have issues, who do they see? They don't see me as a couple therapist. In fact, they usually seek professional support as a last resort and when things are very dire. When couples have issues, they see a friend, a family member, a colleague, their parish priest. They see each one of you sitting here in the room today. And that's why you are so important in supporting marriages. You will be the first person someone talks to about a marriage problem. And so chances are someone's already confided in you about a marital issue. And it's really important to see that you've been chosen. It's a real honour when someone shares their inner vulnerabilities, worries, things they keep hidden from the rest of the world. You need to give them hope. I can't stress how important your role is and how important hope is in all this. So I started talking about my friend who felt caught off guard, not knowing what to say when her friend confided in a marital issue. Now I want you to personalise it. I'm going to give you a reflection activity that gives you a quick glimpse into one of the strategies I cover in my workshop, and that's self-awareness. And I really believe self-awareness is an important strategy and the first strategy in you being an effective accidental marriage counsellor. So I'm going to get you to think about a situation where you felt challenged in responding to someone confiding in you about a marital issue. I'm giving you just under a minute because of the timing. And the key word is challenged. If you can't think of a marital situation, I want you to think about a situation where you felt challenged in responding to someone confiding in you about an issue. And think about what were your initial thoughts and what did you say or do? Just take a moment to reflect on that. Chances are your response fell into one of these roles. Maybe you tended to respond like Cinderella. Because you care for them, you assist the person by talking about your own similar issues and problems. Or like the fairy godmother. Because you care for the person, you offer solutions and advice. Or maybe your response was a bit like a stepmother. Because you care for them, you take your friend's side and are critical of the spouse. Be really honest with yourself, because this honesty will help you give the insight and grow in self-awareness. So we're going to have a quick show of hands. Be brave, there's no judgment. Hand up if you tended to respond like Cinderella. Be brave. Great, thank you. Yeah, and that can happen as well. You tend to have one role that you typically play out more. Hands up if you tended to respond like the fairy godmother. Yeah, thank you. And hand up if you tended to respond like the stepmother. Great, thank you for your honesty, and that's great. Surprisingly, none of these characters communicate effectively as an accidental marriage counsellor. Because in these roles, you're either focusing on yourself and not the other person, like Cinderella, or you're not allowing them to reach their own marriage solutions, like the fairy godmother. Or you're being a judge, like the stepmom. And so you're not doing your role as an accidental marriage counsellor. Unless you're perfect, and we're all human, so we make mistakes in effective communication, and this can be for various reasons: personality, childhood, life experience, values. But these communication mistakes are so common, there's a psychological model for it, and that's the drama triangle, which is a model of unhelpful social interactions developed by psychotherapist Stephen Cartman. Each point on the drama triangle represents a common but ineffective response to a challenging or difficult situation. As you may have guessed, the persecutor is like the stepmother, tending to respond with judgmental or critical. The victim is like Cinderella, who has a more poor me approach. Or the rescuer, like the fairy godmother, who has a more let me help you, let me fix it approach and response. As a psychologist, I'm mindful and can step outside the drama triangle when working with clients in session. But when a friend, family member, a loved one tells me about their suffering, I have this innate urge to jump in and rescue. And because I care for them, I love them, and I don't want to see them hurt. And I have to step back. It's helpful to be mindful of the role you play to avoid the drama. Because when you're in the drama triangle, all you get is drama, and no one wins. One simple way to not fall in the drama triangle is to be aware and mindful of the role you naturally fall into, and step back and not play the role. Easier said than done, but if you have a tendency to be a rescuer, resist the urge to give advice, offer solutions, and try and fix it all. If you have a tendency to be a victim, resist the urge to talk about you and your issues. And if you have a tendency to be a persecutor, resist the urge to be overly judgmental and critical. This stepping back from the role you naturally play is a huge first step in the right direction to supporting you be an effective accidental marriage counsellor. So it's not surprising that the top 5 unhelpful comments couples say they've been given when confiding with someone about their marriage problem fall into the drama triangle. This is a study done by Bill Doherty, he's an American psychologist, and I'm sure if the study was done in Australia, we'd find similar results. And this is what real couples have said, not what professionals are saying don't say. So number 1, too much advice, you should tell him. Or number 2, too much talking about self. When I went through this and 20 minutes later you're still talking about your stuff. Or number 3, too critical of a spouse. What a jerk. Number 4, suggesting a breakup. How can you even be with him? I wouldn't. Or 5, too critical of the confider. Whining isn't going to solve your problems. So you're probably asking yourself, so what should I say and do? Come to my workshop and you'll find out. No, but seriously, you now know how important you are in supporting marriages. You have the self-awareness to identify what role you tend to fall in the drama triangle, and know to resist the urge to play the persecutor, rescuer, or victim. And you have 5 unhelpful comments to avoid saying. And that's the first step in the right direction to start supporting someone experiencing marriage difficulties in a more helpful way. The workshop will cover self-awareness and being mindful of how we communicate, understanding situations where you need to refer someone to professional support and how to do that empathetically and compassionately, understanding your role as an accidental marriage counsellor and what that entails, strategies to effectively listen, learn tips on empathising, and gain key questions to give perspective and support a friend's marriage, allowing them to live in line with their values. There'll be opportunity to practice some of these skills with myself guiding you. This workshop is about giving you practical strategies to support someone going through a marriage difficulty. The skills you learn in this workshop will not only support you be an effective accidental marriage counsellor, but can be transferred to your own relationships. In fact, I really encourage the participants to do that, because the more you practice, the better you get. So if you're married, to use it to enhance your relationships with your spouse, your children, your colleagues. If you're a priest, to use it to enhance your relationship with your parishioners, fellow priests, and friends. And all this will help you have enriched relationships. Thank you.
I arrived slightly late this morning. As a boy from the country, I was just taking a leisurely walk here through the city and thinking that we were starting half an hour later than we were. So I arrived partway through that prayer. It was a beautiful prayer. Thank you very much. So students explore marriage. At last year's ROM conference, I spoke about remote and proximate marriage preparation. Some of you might remember if you were here last year. This preparation best takes place in families, but some of it does occur in our Catholic schools. And last year, when speaking about that, I spoke a little of my own family story, of my personal experience growing up in a family which had my mum and dad's marriage as its firm foundation. Whilst I didn't have a perfect or idyllic childhood or adolescence, it was a happy one. And I had a real lived model of what marriage is and what it entails in my mum and dad's marriage. I witnessed firsthand the fights and arguments, or discussions as they liked to call them, their mutual compromises with each other, their resolving their discussions, their self-sacrifice for each other and for their children, the anchoring of their marriage in faith and hope in God, their working through life's hardships together, and their occasional displays of tenderness and affection. One incident I vividly recall, which I want to share with you, is coming home from school one afternoon when I was about 9 or 10, to find Mum very upset and crying because the diamond from her engagement ring had fallen loose and was lost. We kids could see that finding it was important. It clearly meant a lot to Mum. So Mum and we kids searched the house for the next couple of hours for this diamond, but to no avail. All the while, during the search, she kept telling us all about how she and Dad had met and how he had proposed and various stories in their relationship. The interesting thing was that when Dad returned from work, Mum burst into tears again, sobbing as she told Dad what had happened. Almost immediately, Dad's gaze fell on a patch of the kitchen floor near the sink and he said, "What's that?" He went over to it and picked up the missing diamond. Mum hugged and kissed Dad like I'd never seen before. As a child in a big family with busy parents and with parents who rarely showed their emotions or displayed affection, it was a real light bulb moment for me as I consciously realised for the first time in my life that Mum and Dad loved each other and that they were, in fact, deeply in love with each other. Today, I want us to think of the many kids who don't get to have these experiences. We all know that many of our kids today don't get to grow up in fully intact families with mum and dad still in their first and sacramental marriage. Many kids today grow up in all sorts of blended families. I don't want to, and in fact I can't, pass judgment on the many good mums and dads who do their best and often a very good job raising their children in very difficult and complicated family situations and circumstances. I witness this among some of my own family members and parishioners. But I do want to make the point that many of our children today do not get to witness firsthand on a daily basis the marriage ins and outs of their mum and dad's marriage. I'm sure all of us have read books or at least articles on some of the impacts this has upon our kids, particularly in regard to their ability to form and commit to permanent relationships and get married. Children are increasingly not having modelled for them what intact family life is. Not through any fault of their own, they see the breakdown of marriage as a normal and constant part of the world around them. Many simply do not know what a marriage is, as they have never lived in one, and they are ill-prepared for it in the future. Add to this the relatively new realities of the internet, of social media, and of internet pornography, which are often the primary source of information for many of our young people on relationships, sexuality, marriage, and family. To say nothing of TV programs like Home and Away, Married at First Sight, and a whole other myriad now of TV programs that I see the advertisements for, and looks like Married at First Sight might be one of the tamer ones. We have a challenge before us. I may not be able to change the world, but I can do something. So 5 years ago, in 2015, we introduced a wonderful initiative in the Diocese of Armidale called Explore. And that's where we get our title, Students Explore Marriage. The Explore initiative was developed in the Diocese of Westminster, England, and has been run there since 2000 to assist senior high school students to reflect on the meaning of marriage and relationships. The initiative is very simple and very effective. The Bishop invites the parish priests and school principals to cooperate in identifying suitable married couples who are then given training by Education Office personnel to enter the classroom and answer the questions of high school students about their marriage. They are not there to teach the students, to give advice, or to generalise about marriage, nor do they give their opinions about aspects of marriage, about controversial issues, or about church teachings. Their task is simply to answer young people's questions about their marriage. You've got up there on the picture. No, that's not there. I'm going blind. That's a different couple. Some of our couples who do this are here this morning, and you'll have the opportunity to meet them and ask them questions in the workshop. In this way, young people are invited to enter into dialogue with and investigate the relationships of ordinary married couples who speak from their own married experience. The pilot program in 2015 in the Diocese of Armidale was developed following consultation with the Explore team in Westminster and with Francine Parola from the Marriage Resource Centre, from whom I first heard about it. And as soon as I heard about it, I thought, I've got to try this. I'm sure it'll be great. And the Explore program formed an integral part of our inaugural Diocesan Marriage and Family Week, which we celebrate in Armidale every year in July around the feast of Saints Joachim and Anne, so it's actually this week. Our Marriage and Family Week is still going strong. Each year I choose a particular theme related to marriage and family life. The family as a home of mercy, the family praying together, the family as a school of virtue, and other such themes, as you can see there. During the week, every child in our Catholic schools and in Catholic SRE lessons in state schools receive lessons prepared by our Catholic Schools Office based on the theme for that year. Also, the Sunday Mass that week is celebrated as a Mass for families with appropriate celebrations. And during that week, our chosen married couples go into our Year 10 and 11 classes to answer students' questions about their marriage. We have 5 parishes that have high schools in them. Each one of them participates in the program. Identification of suitable married couples to work with the students undertaken by parish priests in consultation with the school principals. The couples selected range from those with very young families through to those who have been married for over 40 years. And once identified, the couples are formally invited by me as the bishop to assist in the mission of the church in this way. They receive brief but very effective training from Lee Herden in our Catholic Schools Office, who is here this morning and will also be part of our workshop. I'll let Lee talk more about that during the workshop. Outcomes and future direction. Just very briefly, I'll touch on how it's gone, and there'll be more on that in the workshop. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. The students are able to meet Catholic married couples who are willing and open about their relationships and how their faith has helped to support the growth of their relationships. Feedback from the schools indicate that in many cases the students go home and discuss with their own parents what has happened at school that day. For many students, it's the first time they have encountered couples willing to talk about their marriage in such an intimate and personal way. Even kids like me who grow up with their mum and dad's marriage intact often don't get to hear their parents talk about their marriage. They just don't do it. Parish priests have received very positive feedback from the couples and from the students. Where the parish priest is able to be present for some of the sessions, this has been seen as a positive. The couples themselves generally report the experience less daunting than they thought it would be. Now, I think that's the grace of God. Feedback from the schools indicate that the teachers who moderate the sessions find that the couples had the students very fully engaged. But there'll be more about that in the workshop. So, I'm a big fan of Explore. It is something we can do to help our young people who otherwise might not have the opportunity to see some of the beauty of marriage and to see that family life based on marriage helps people to set down roots for life. So I'll conclude with two quotes from Pope Francis' apostolic exhortation to young people that speak of these two things, the beauty of marriage and the setting down of the firm roots, which many children don't get to see on a daily basis, but at least we can get them to see a glimpse of it through the Explore program. Firstly, the roots. Pope Francis says, "I have sometimes seen young and beautiful trees, their branches reaching to the sky, pushing ever higher, and they seemed a song of hope. Later, following a storm, I would find them fallen and lifeless. They lacked deep roots. They spread their branches without being firmly planted, and so they fell as soon as nature unleashed her power. For it is impossible for us to grow unless we have strong roots to support us and to keep us firmly grounded. It is easy to drift off when there is nothing to clutch onto, nothing to hold on to." And in regards to the beauty, he says, "Dear young friends, do not let them exploit your youth to promote a shallow life that confuses beauty with appearances. Realise that there is beauty in the labourer who returns home grimy and unkept, but with the joy of having earned food for his family. There is extraordinary beauty in the fellowship of a family at table, generously sharing what food it has. There is beauty in the wife, slightly dishevelled and no longer young, who continues to care for her sick husband despite her own failing health. Long after the springtime of their courtship has passed, there is beauty in the fidelity of those couples who still love one another in the autumn of life. Those elderly people who still hold hands as they walk. There is also a beauty unrelated to appearances or fashionable dress in all those men and women who pursue their personal vocation with love in the hard work of building a happy family. So in the workshop, now one of the young couples who take part in Explore, who live in Armidale close to me, accepted my invitation to come along and share in the workshop their experiences of the Explore program. And I noticed that we've got one of the other couples, Martins from Gunnedah here, who might come along to that workshop as well and share their thoughts if they want to. And Lee Hurden from our Catholic Schools Office will share a bit more about the nuts and bolts of how we actually go about doing it. So thank you very much. God bless you all.
We're here at the Renaissance of Marriage Conference and I'm speaking with Bishop Kennedy, who's from the Archdiocese of Armidale. Welcome, Bishop.
Thank you, Lily.
Bishop, at this conference, we're always looking for positive ways to build Catholic marriage culture. Your talk at the conference was about how sharing the treasure of our marriage with our young people can do that. Can you explain a little bit more about it?
Yeah, certainly. I spoke on one particular way that we can do that, sharing a positive experience of marriage with our young people, which we need to do because the reality now is so many children grow up without the experience of just living in day-to-day life with a married mum and a dad and seeing how marriage works and how all of the interplay and how they get through things. And often too in families that are still intact, often a mum and dad won't talk about their marriage with their kids. So what we have is the Explore program, which originated in Westminster in England, where local parishioners, married couples, are invited by me to enter into our schools, and they have a session with the young people in which they are prepared to let the young people ask them questions about their marriage, and they just answer openly and honestly. And it's been a wonderful experience. The feedback we receive has been very positive, both from the couples who do it, who actually say that preparing together to do this actually helps us in our marriage relationship, but also the young people themselves, who for some it's a real jaw-dropping experience to hear a man and a woman talk openly and honestly about their marriage, about the difficulties that they can go through, about how they get through it, about just regular day-to-day life, and also about the role of their faith and God in their marriage, which has a deep impact on the young people as well.
What do you think for the other delegates at this conference? What can they take from your wisdom and take back to their communities and organisations at Explore?
Okay, well, I'm just thinking myself about how I can take back what I've heard others say. I haven't thought so much about what others can do. It's just a matter of, those who were here, we gave a little outline of what the program is and how it works. But if anyone might happen to see this and their interest be spiked a little bit, I'm happy for anyone. Just contact me at the Diocese of Armidale. With the internet now, you can find anybody's phone number and email address. I'm happy for people to contact us, and we can tell them more about it and help get them started.
Thank you so much, Bishop. And you heard that. That's an invitation from Bishop Kennedy to give him a call and find out more about the Explore program. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure, Lily. Thank you.
So here we are at the 2019 Renaissance of Marriage Conference, where myself, Byron, and Francine, my wife, we're conveners or co-conveners of the conference. The conference is a national gathering of Catholic marriage and family educators and formators from all walks of life all across Australia.
We've been privileged to share these past 2 days with delegates from so many different fields. We've had people who work in marriage preparation, we've had school teachers and school principals, we've got priests and clergy, a number of archbishops and a bishop here as well, people from the marriage tribunal, people in counselling. So really quite a diverse background of people that have been here to listen to speakers with expertise in all those different areas. So counsellors talking about how we can be effective accidental counsellors when family and friends confide in us that they're having some difficulties in their marriage. How do we respond to them effectively? It was one of the sessions. We've got sessions on theology of the body and understanding that sort of theological foundation for a better understanding of not just the sacrament of matrimony, but also what it means to be the bride of Christ. We've also had very practical sessions on how-tos, such as how to be more effective in our workplaces and our various ministries.
And finally, it's just been a lot of fun. It's great to actually get together with people who might be working in different areas that we've never met before, but actually discovering new ideas and insights from each other, partly through the talks that are given, but also just partly through the conversations that happen over lunch and in between the sessions. It's been energising and enriching at the same time, and I think most importantly gives a lot of us hope that what we're doing will have impact, hope that we can actually have more impact through drawing on ideas and thoughts from others.
I think for me that one of the key messages that has come through from a number of different speakers and seems to be almost a little bit of a theme for us has been to put aside our timidity, to be really bold and unapologetic in going forward to proclaim the great beauty of the Church's teachings for marriage. I think in our culture it's become quite sort of a hostile towards the Catholic Church generally, but also very particularly around its teachings for marriage and sexuality. But we've got a great truth and a great beauty and richness there that we need to take out to the world and take it out confidently and unapologetically. So I think many of the delegates here have been greatly encouraged in forming networks and also getting support from each other to go out and do that more boldly and effectively.
But we're going to do it within a particular framework, and we want to lay out a framework that's actually very broadly applicable beyond anything that we would do even in marriage in this impact talk, and then pick up the more of the details in the workshop itself. Go.
The why behind everything we do in the Church, including Catholic marriage formation, is evangelisation, to bring people into a deep and personal encounter with the divine, with our God. It is useful to think about it as a process. It's a journey. A model we find very helpful is the know, love, serve model. Evangelisation, that is our journey of encounter with God, is for most of us an iterative process that deepens as we cycle through it. The better we know God, the more we can love God. And the more we love, the more we desire to serve God. And the more we serve, the more we discover God and grow in knowledge of Him, and so the cycle continues.
The beauty of this framework, I think, is that we can step onto this process at any point in the cycle. The critical issue, though, is that we move through it as a process, going deeper and deeper over time. It's a lifelong journey of deep conversion. This process of evangelisation moves into a fuller form of discipleship over time. This model is not unsurprisingly the same that we do as a married couple. It's the same process because they both involve falling in love. Knowledge leads to love, love leads to service, which leads to a deeper knowledge, and so on. Step off this cycle and our marriages stagnate. Stay on it and they get deeper and more exciting.
So spelling it out in a little more detail, our why for our Catholic marriage formators is to bring people into an experience of God's love through the way they experience human love, and most particularly in their vocational calling of Catholic marriage. This is our why, our purpose. We do relationships and marriage formation at all stages because we want people to know they are loved and to experience love, because we know that where there is love, there is God, the perfect lover.
And we forget this at our peril. If our work simply becomes focused on divorce prevention, or we become part of that happiness cult, then our work loses its purpose. We are in the business of evangelisation, saving souls, not just divorce prevention. The latter, divorce prevention, is just a means to a greater end. There is no question that this is a big challenge, particularly in the culture that we've talked about so many times over this week, these couple of days together. We live in a post-Christian culture where we have the task of both re-evangelisation of our own and evangelisation of in an otherwise hostile world.
So where do we start? How do we do this? Yes, we know how to do it. Yes, we know we need to do this. It's a tricky question to answer given the diversity in the room. We have people working with young adults in their various habitats, schools, universities, youth groups. We have people from lay movements working with couples both as they prepare for marriage and as they try to live it. And we have people working in church agencies, marriage and family life officers, diocesan agencies, Catholic care, marriage tribunals and so on. And we have also religious and priests. However, if we step back a bit, we want to develop a proposition that we believe has a universal application and is built on three foundational elements.
To be effective evangelisers, we think there are three things we can draw on, and we're going to go through them each in turn. The first is a very simple one, but one we often forget, which is do as little as possible from the centre. The first foundational element of our thinking is that very thought, and is captured with the principle of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity requires that matters that are best managed at the lowest possible level in an organisation should be done at that level. The lower you can do it, that's where it should stay. Leave it at that level. It's actually a principle that's the very heart of the way the Catholic Church is organised, so it shouldn't be unfamiliar to us. There are many matters, there are some matters, a few of them, mainly related to doctrine and liturgy, that are held at the centre because they are key to the universal nature of the Church. And those things are best decided centrally. But much of the rest of it is left to the local organisations, be they parishes or dioceses. We tend to forget that at the core of every organisational structure, particularly we tend to forget that the core organisational structure of the Catholic Church is uniquely flat. We think of the Church as incredibly hierarchical. I work in business. There is no global organisation as flat as the Catholic Church is. It goes Pope, Bishop, Parish. 3 levels. I have never found an organisation that is that flat in the way it operates. It's got a lot of bureaucracy around the sides of it, but the line of control is incredibly flat. And that's the principle of subsidiarity in action. So we should not forget that. The watch point, of course, for all of us is that it's human nature for those who work in the centre to always want to do more. It comes from a good heart, but it rarely works. Overreach by the centre is never effective. And we only have to think of the communist central planned economies to actually see the disaster that happens when the centre takes on way too much.
The second foundational element is that the real action of evangelisation happens in community. While people can come to believe in God through reason alone, most don't. And even those that do, most come to know and serve God through community. Community is where faith is experienced and therefore most typically learned. Community based on other-centred loving relationships is where faith best develops and grows. And serving God is primarily exercised within the community setting. At its most basic level, this is the family, the domestic church. Family is the school of love where we learn what it means to truly love, to forgive and to accept the person, even as we reject their immoral or harmful action. The family is the heartland of the faith. Parish is another example. Natural geographic communities of the faithful who come together, not just to worship, but to support each other and organise outreach to our wider communities. Youth groups, lay movements, prayer groups, family groups, men and women's groups. These are all different expressions of the same idea. And if we think about our own faith journey, it is one or more of these communal experiences that where many of us found our faith or deepened it. And herein lies the critical insight. Almost everything we do that we expect to have a real effect will happen not only at the community level, but in community.
And the third foundational element that we want to build on today is the notion of the ways we are changing and using technology in the way we communicate and interact with each other. When it comes to into education and formation, at its heart, the practical insight of what we think about when it comes to technology is the notion of the flipped classroom. Simply put, the idea is that we relocate the primary act of instruction or of knowledge transfer or information transfer to outside the classroom environment and use the face-to-face time in the classroom to facilitate learning and the appropriation of the content. So to use a very simple model, and we think of a school, rather than require thousands of teachers to learn how to effectively teach quantum mechanics to Year 12 physics students, as my son is currently studying, it's a hard topic, we actually create the best possible video-based learning resource and we put that online. Homework, as we traditionally know, is it changes. The homework is to go home and watch the lesson for tomorrow, using the best instruction resource that we can put. And I would challenge a lot of Year 12 physics teachers, no matter how well-intentioned they are, to outdo the sort of resources that we could put in the kids' hands today, because our kids find them on the internet. Homework changes. Of course, the classroom changes, because now rather than having that teacher trying to instruct 30 students in one hit simultaneously, they can actually practice individually with a coach walking around and helping them inculcate the learning. It's a completely flipped model. And that just doesn't apply to schools. It applies so much more easily to adult educational areas that we work in.
Just to be clear, when Byron says we can do this, he's not talking about us personally. He's not going to go and make videos in quantum mechanics. It's happening all around us. One of our kids just graduated from full-time university study at the University of New South Wales while working full-time in his industry, attending almost all of his lectures online, after hours, on his timetable, and not the university timetable. In our own marriage preparation courses, where we used to deploy in-session video-based instruction, we found couples actually preferring to watch the video content online before they came to the session in order to enable more time to talk about the concepts with their mentor couple. And there are other examples. We can all access world-class lectures by a vast number of leading Catholic theologians on YouTube channels and on other platforms. Broken Bay Institute, another good example, has developed a deep experience in remote webinar-based training. There's a revolution happening in high-quality content accessibility, now only limited by our time and interest.
So you take those three ideas, do everything you can locally, the community, everything happens in community, and the enablement of technology, and you put them together, and at one level there's nothing new in any of that. These are not new ideas, they are ancient wisdom. It's by combining these ideas, or these three elements, that we arrive at a paradigm that we think is new, or at least a good reminder for us, for action that gives us a way to be effective in evangelisation. And this is best summarised by the emerging model that we talk about, which is basically to be centrally enabled and locally delivered. Our premise is that we have at our fingertips a way to communicate through the technologies we have and to evangelise, build community and leverage the principles of subsidiarity in ways that we could have only dreamed about when we were getting married. From the centre, we can engage locally in ways we just couldn't do before. Now, to be clear, this is as much about a general mindset shift rather than a particular application of a technology. And it's also not a new idea even with a technology. The printing press, which we are so familiar, revolutionised the way we taught and learnt in the church centuries ago. This is an ongoing thing, but we're in a different era now. So let us explain through the lens of our marriage preparation work.
From our Sydney-based Marriage Resource Centre infrastructure, we can offer a parish priest who is supported by just a few married couples in his parish a marriage preparation experience that was previously totally impractical to mount from within the local parish community. We now have a way of introducing engaged couples to Catholic marriage formation through an experience of the local community, not outside of it. In a country of vast rural distances, this is a model that has very practical appeal, for example in Rockhampton, where we've recently done some training. This is no longer a vision of the future, it's a working reality. In the past 2 years, we've put over 2,000 couples through our course in dozens of countries using this approach, and we know it works. The outstanding efficacy measures we spoke about at the last conference remain.
The most exciting part, of course, we're only getting started. Other providers are doing this as well. There's at least 4 other marriage preparation programs following an online accessible platform to be used in local communities. And it's not restricted to marriage preparation. Alpha's another great example that is of essentially enabled, locally delivered model that's been operating for years, and they keep refining their application as the technology changes. It brings a way for parishes to introduce people to the early stages of Christian formation in a way that a parish could never mount by itself.
Putting the idea of centrally enabled and locally delivered into practice requires us all to think differently. It requires us to think like enablers rather than developers. At the end of the day, everything we do has to work towards encountering a person, and that almost always happens at the local level. So the primary question is, how are we enabling that encounter through our work?
Thank you very much.
Things that Francine and I spoke about is a new mindset when it comes to evangelisation and bringing the marriage formation work we do into the community. It was the idea of central enablement but local delivery. And that's really how we sort of need to think about it, is how do we take the resources that we have, both internationally and nationally, very good resources, and rather than at the local level trying to reinvent or recreate our own resources, really focus on how we bring that vast treasury into our local community. And that's quite an exciting way of thinking about it, particularly when you think about what's possible now with some of the modern communication technologies that we're dealing with, where we can literally take something and make it globally available to a parish and give a parish a resource and a level of materials and content that once was only dreamed of.
Shalom World Television is coming to Australia. This is a great gift. It's been gifted to many parts of the world, and now it's our Australian turn to receive it with open arms. I welcome it, I bless it. It's going to really support family life, married life, youth, give us a resource that we know that we need really great help in these areas. May Almighty God bless this new resource coming to our land, in the name of the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.